All right, everyone, we'll get started here. Thank you for joining us. As I said, we're happy to have you all here and welcome you to our webinar on the Center on Great Teachers and Leaders Mentoring and Induction Toolkit. We're certainly excited to have so much interest in this webinar and to be able to share with you the work that we have started over the last few months. We realize that there will be people joining us as we get started, but within this platform, all of you that are listening in are placed on mute. And so if you do want to interact with us, which we would love for you to do, we have a chat box at the bottom of the control panel that you see on the right-hand side of your screen. And at any point during this webinar, please feel free to chat with us by entering comments into that chat box. So as I said, we're excited to have you all here with us. And just to introduce myself, I'm Lisa Laughlin. I'm joined by my colleague, Lindsay Hayes. And we're here to represent our team and share with you the toolkit that we've developed in support of your work. Just to give you a little background on who we are, I'm a content expert with the GTL Center, which is the short version of the Center on Great Teachers and Leaders. And I have served as a part of the GTL team for the past 8 years. In fact, I worked with the former TQ Center back in the day when it was called that. So I've had a long tenure. And most of my work is focused on educator effectiveness, teacher professional development, and teacher induction. I've had the privilege of working on teacher induction really over a decade. So this is exciting to be able to share this work with you today. And I'm also joined today by my amazing colleague, Lindsay Hayes. Lindsay has worked for the GTL Center for about 5 years, and she's the content lead for work that is related to special education. Through the GTL and her other projects, she provides technical assistance to states on issues that are related to systems of teacher preparation and support. She's a former special education teacher and coordinator, and has contributed mightily to the design and the development of this toolkit. So we're both eager to jump right into this webinar, and so let me just tell you briefly about who we are. As some of you are likely already aware, the Center on Great Teachers and Leaders is a federal content center that supports the 12 regional comprehensive centers that are shown in this map. The regional comprehensive centers support the state education agencies within their purview, and we collaborate with all of those folks to foster the capacity of educator networks to build and sustain a seamless system of support for great teachers and leaders across the nation. One strand of this work that's recently emerging as one of great interest from many states is the one that's focused on mentoring and induction. So with this mission in mind, we're focused today on talking to you about the reasons why mentoring and induction matter. I'll share those reasons with all of you, and also explore the essential components of high quality mentoring and induction programs. And then I'll turn it over to Lindsay, who will introduce the toolkit and share next steps for getting additional support. And then we should have plenty of time for questions and answers at the end. And if, as I mentioned, if you do have questions and answers or comments, questions or comments, you can put those into the chat box at any time. So please feel free to do that. So let's get us started and talk about why this work matters. First, it's important to make sure that we're all on the same page about what induction is. It's a new term for lots of folks. and it's closely related to mentoring, but it's really a larger system of coordinated and aligned supports that are designed to provide new educators with a supportive pathway into the profession. As I said, induction is a larger system of support for new educators. And while the terms mentoring and induction are often used interchangeably, mentoring is really just one element of a comprehensive induction program. Mentoring generally is defined by the one-on-one support and feedback provided by an experienced veteran teacher to a new or a struggling teacher. And induction programs are more like an umbrella that overarches mentoring and other professional supports like seminars, online learning, and help with curriculum planning. Induction has become a topic of interest to many states and districts as a strategy for addressing the supports that teachers need between pre-service and in-service. And as we all know, teacher development occurs on a continuum that spans the entire career of an educator. Development doesn't just stop after pre-service, and it doesn't automatically continue into in-service unless there are good programs in place. And new teachers have unique needs at the start of their career, and that's where mentoring and induction play an important role. It's also important to recognize that mentoring and induction are critical elements of any coordinated talent development strategy, which is something that a lot of states and districts are focused on. They can play a key role in connecting and supporting many state and district-driven initiatives, such as improving equitable access to excellent educators, alleviating teacher shortages, addressing school turnaround, and implementing the Every Student Succeeds Act. Induction and mentoring are important to these initiatives because they play an important role in how teachers grow professionally, in how they value collaboration and reflection, and in how they see themselves in the profession and in their school communities. And state education agencies often recognize this need by putting into place policies that require some type of mentoring or induction supports for new teachers. In fact, our team at the GTL Center just finished conducting a review of the state ESSA plans. Lindsay, if you could move up, thank you, to the next slide. And in this review of the ESSA plans, we found that 45 of the 51 ESSA plans that were submitted highlighted mentoring and induction as a strategy. States often cite talent management, often in the form of teacher retention or addressing teacher attrition, and also cite equitable access to educators as key reasons for pursuing greater supports for new teachers. In 27 of those plans, states have robust, detailed plans around mentoring and induction. And in 25 of the states, they are planning on using Title II funds to support educator growth as a mechanism to retain effective teachers. Leveraging Title II funds can establish a coordinated statewide approach, so we love to see these numbers. And also want to emphasize that states might also consider using mentoring and induction as a strategy in supporting schools identified for targeted systems of support, because we know that mentor quality is one, or not just mentor quality, educator quality is one of the most influential factors to improve student growth. So let's talk briefly about why induction matters for new teachers. This slide illustrates some of the research and some of the big findings. But I should probably first start by saying that the research is somewhat limited for a couple of reasons. One is that there's pretty significant variation in the induction components that are offered by districts and schools. And what I mean by that is that some schools offer very comprehensive induction supports. Others offer mentoring and a few other supports. And still others offer just kind of a very basic layer of what we call buddy mentoring, where mentoring can be little more than a friendship with a colleague, going to coffee, making sure that that the new teacher has a connection to a teacher in their school. And then the second piece that is important to note is that some of the research has limitations just in the quality of the design in some studies. So because of those two factors, we have a relatively small research base, but what we do know is fairly useful. So for example, beginning teachers who participated in some kind of induction tend to have higher satisfaction, greater commitment, and are more likely to stay in the profession. Likewise, around teachers' instructional practice, most of the research suggests that beginning teachers who participated in some kind of induction perform better at various aspects of teaching, such as keeping students on task, developing workable lesson plans, using effective student questioning techniques, and adjusting classroom activities to meet students' interests. New teachers are also less likely to leave the profession if they're provided with a mentor in their content area and if they participate in formal planning and collaboration with other teachers. And mentoring itself is an important piece of the puzzle. So in 2014, we conducted a study at the GTL Center that was focused on national and state teachers of the year. And we found that those really exceptional teachers, 68% of them who had an assigned mentor, ranked mentoring among their top 3 most important supports for developing their effectiveness as teachers. So on the next slide, we have what is a theory of change that we developed and used for really the background to all of this work that we'll share with you in the toolkit. And what's nice about this theory of change is it aligns very nicely to a review of research that was conducted by Richard Ingersoll and Michael Strong in 2011. And that review illustrates that there is empirical evidence to support the claim that mentoring and induction activities have a positive impact on teacher commitment and retention, also on teacher classroom instructional practices, and on student achievement, or in the case of this, visual student performance. Findings related to teacher retention are less consistent than those in student performance, but it could be argued that more comprehensive induction programs, so the ones that are really robust, do lead to greater results in teacher retention. Finally, for student performance, most of the studies reviewed showed that students of beginning teachers who participated in some kind of induction had higher scores or greater gains on academic achievement tests. And in a recent longitudinal study of the new Teacher Center induction model that was conducted by SRI Education, illustrated that 2 years of comprehensive induction support for teachers resulted in positive impacts on student achievement, such that students in grades 4 through 8 of teachers who participated in NTC induction scored higher on average than students of control teachers. So these impacts resulted in the equivalent of approximately 2 to 5 additional months of learning, depending on the student's grade level and the subject area tested. And as I say this, my colleague Lindsay is adding these resources to the chat box. So if you're interested in learning more about any of this research, you can click on those. So all of what I've shared thus far illustrates some very promising results. But we also know that teacher induction programs are often not consistently developed and applied. So they're not always comprehensive in the way that the new teacher center induction model is. So this research that's highlighted here is from the Regional Education Laboratory Central, and it was really focused on a snapshot of district policies for mentoring new teachers in 5 Midwestern states. It included nearly 1,000 districts. And essentially what they found is that there's wide variation in the way in which mentoring and induction programs are implemented in schools and districts. And this may not be a surprise to any of you who are working in the field. But one important aspect of this study is that they found that the differences were in a variety of different areas within mentoring. So it was the type of mentoring that was allowed, so how often mentors actually met with teachers, the number of years new teachers experience induction, and also wide variation in the requirements for mentors around their own training. So how much professional development did they have in their role as mentors? So from this, we can make note that inconsistency in types of supports are often the case, which is one of the reasons why research in this field is difficult to conduct, and why often results are inconclusive and are difficult to generalize to larger populations. In the REL Central study, across all districts, a lack of funding, a lack of time, and a lack of stipends were most commonly identified as barriers to implementing adequate mentoring or induction programs. And this is something that I think all of you probably on the phone are, this is a consideration that's important. That's why, we wanted to include this slide. So it is a big concern, but I think we also have to acknowledge that teacher attrition is also very costly. Like many critical elements of schooling, it's important to consider the funding that's required to provide the key components of a robust and comprehensive induction program. So for example, providing at least 2 years of mentoring support and offering stipends and release time for mentors, those are 3 components that will require adequate funding, not to mention the other elements of the system itself. So while induction may have a price tag, this last bullet gets at, I think, a very important point that research suggests that investing in comprehensive induction programs can create a financial gain. And, not everything is about finances, but along with that financial gain, it's probably likely that there are additional benefits to induction in that we will have more effective teachers in each classroom. And this is maybe all the more reason why we should recognize mentoring and induction as a strategy, not just for the professional development of teachers, but also as a strategy for school improvement. So when we talk about comprehensive mentoring and induction programs, what do we really mean? This list on this slide highlights 9 high-quality mentoring and induction practices that provide a more comprehensive and effective model of induction. Our colleagues and partners in this work at the New Teacher Center follow these practices in their comprehensive model for induction. So I'll walk through each of these one by one. So the first is rigorous mentor selection based on qualities such as such as evidence of outstanding teaching practice, experience with adult learners, respective peers, and current knowledge of professional development. The second one here, ongoing professional development and support for mentors. This is often overlooked, but very important. Sanctioned time for mentor-teacher interaction, which is cited as one of the most challenging to offer, as time is critical and in short supply sometimes. The next, multi-year mentoring, that is intensive and ongoing to improve teacher practice and consequently student achievement. Intensive guidance, these next two, intensive guidance and professional teaching standards that focus new teachers on instructional growth. So rather than just doing buddy mentoring, really focusing on instructional growth and improvement. Ongoing beginning teacher professional development that's focused on instructional improvement, problem solving, and mutual support. Opportunities such as regularly scheduled seminars and online learning communities can provide a context for rich networking, professional dialogue, and reflection. And it's often not something that induction programs consider, but having those targeted supports for beginning teachers can be really critical. And then clear roles and responsibilities for administrators so that they can set the stage for beginning teacher and mentor success. They can create time for induction and these relationships between mentors and their new teachers, and also to establish a positive culture for teacher development in their buildings and in the system. And then finally, collaboration with all stakeholders to create a culture of commitment and continuous improvement that can really make a difference in the working conditions that can really affect teacher retention. So those are the high quality mentoring and induction practices. And we have a quick poll for you that my colleague Whitney is going to pull up for us. So that should pop up on the screen momentarily. And we just want you to answer this question. So how many of the high quality mentoring and induction practices do the districts in your state offer and do well? So there are 9 of them listed. How many of them do you feel that the districts in your state offer and do well? So go ahead and select the choice that makes the most sense for you. And we'll give you a few more seconds to fill that out. We have lots of answers, but keep thinking about it and go ahead and answer. And as we're finishing up this poll, I'll give you another minute to answer. I'm just going to address a question that we're getting in the chat box. Folks are asking if we'll have access to the slides after the webinar, and absolutely you will. We can share those, and we will actually have a recording of this webinar on the GTL website soon after this webinar. Okay, so it looks like we have a little over half of you have voted, and the results that I see, I don't think you all can see this, so I'm just going to read to you the results of the poll. So 0% have said all 9, so none of you selected that as a response. 7% of you have said 7 or 8, which is pretty good. I'm happy to see that 7% of you are in that place. And then about 44% said 4 to 6, and then 47% said 1 to 3, and then 1% of you said none. So it looks like, you know, as a large group, we are saying that maybe there's more work to be done to turn your systems from induction programs to really comprehensive mentoring and induction programs. So that's very helpful for us to see, and I think gives us confidence that the work that we've put into this toolkit is going to be of use to you and your teams. So with that, thank you for filling out the polling question, and I'm going to turn it over to Lindsay, and she's going to talk to you about the toolkit itself. Lindsay?
Okay, thanks, Lisa. So in this section of the webinar, I'm going to give an overview of the toolkit that was developed by GTL Center staff. I'm going to describe the tools that are available in the toolkit and their purposes, and then I'm going to give some examples of how those tools can be used. We'll finish up the webinar with talking about how you can get access to those tools and next steps regarding surveys and accessing things on our website. So the purpose of our toolkit is to give regional comprehensive centers and state education agencies tools, resources, and support to facilitate meaningful conversations with local education agencies about the design of effective and high-quality mentoring and induction programs. So to summarize that briefly, the goal of our toolkit is really about fostering collaborative relationships between states and districts. The genesis of this toolkit was really out of our Talent for Turnaround Leadership Academy initiative, which is an initiative that is co-led by the GTL Center, the Center on School Turnaround, and also includes representatives from our regional comprehensive centers. And in our Talent for Turnaround Leadership Academy initiative, we have groups of collaborative teams coming together consisting of representation from the RCCs, state education agencies, and districts. And these collaborative teams are coming together to explore how coherent and aligned systems of talent management can be leveraged to attract, support, and retain excellent educators in the highest need and lowest performing schools. And not only is this initiative about getting excellent educators into the highest need and lowest performing schools, it's about making sure that these educators have the knowledge and skills required to turn around those low performing high need schools. Another organization that I want to mention again and highlight our collaborative efforts with is the New Teacher Center. The New Teacher Center works directly with districts to implement models of teacher leadership, including things like training for mentors and training for principals on the implementation of mentoring and induction programs. At various points throughout my description of the toolkit, you will hear me reference various New Teacher Center materials, and I highly encourage you to take a look at those when you are pointed to them. So let's preview the structure of the toolkit. The toolkit is divided into 7 modules. They are listed here on the screen. The first 3 modules have already been developed, and the remaining 4 modules are going to be developed throughout 2018. So the first 3 modules that we will be previewing in depth today are Module 1, the Introduction to the GTL Mentoring and Induction Toolkit, and then a module on mentor recruitment, selection, and assignment, and a module on mentor professional learning, development, and assessment. The remaining modules that will be coming in 2018 include a module on beginning teacher professional learning and development, a module on mentoring and induction for special educators, one on collecting evidence of induction program success, and finally a module on the role of the principal in induction programs. So each of these 7 modules is divided into 3 different components. The first component is an anchor presentation, which is a PowerPoint slide deck that includes full speaker notes. And the purpose of the anchor presentation is to summarize the research and the best practices on that topic. Some of the slides that Lisa just went through were taken from our anchor presentation for module number 1, Introduction to the GTL Mentoring and Induction Toolkit. So again, this is a slide deck, and the intention is to summarize research and best practices and then point out connections to tools that can help state and district collaborative teams facilitate these conversations. To supplement the anchor presentations, we also have handouts. These handouts provide additional information related to various mentoring and induction topics, and sometimes help teams complete various reflection activities related to the topics. And finally, we have what we're calling team tools. And these are interactive tools that help teams plan, design, and implement the components of a comprehensive mentoring and induction program. These tools are meant to be used by state and district collaborative teams to help foster conversations about what it takes to design a very high quality mentoring and induction program, and then plan to get those implements in place. So what I'm now going to do is go through the first 3 modules that have been developed, talk a little bit about the purpose of each of these modules, and then highlight the tools that are available within the modules. In addition to highlighting the tools, I'm going to make sure that you have a description of what those tools can do, and then I'll give a few examples of what this might look like in practice in a collaboration between a state and a district. So module number 1, as I mentioned, is the Introduction to the GTL Mentoring and Induction Toolkit. It has an anchor presentation, and again, many of the slides that my colleague Lisa just went through are in this anchor presentation. They're expanded on in terms of providing some more detail about research and best practices. So I encourage you, if the beginning portion of this presentation is something you're interested in, please check out the anchor presentation for module 1, because it will contain that information in addition to a much more expanded detail. The handout that supplements this anchor presentation is from the New Teacher Center, and it is the high quality mentoring and induction practices, the 9 high quality practices that Lisa just reviewed. Our team tools consist of a data dive tool. So the purpose of this tool is really to give teams a facilitation structure so they can look at outcomes related to mentoring and induction. Lisa showed a graphic on the slide that came out of the Ingersoll and Strong research, where we're looking at data elements such as teacher retention, teacher performance, student achievement data, things of that nature. So this tool is to give teams a facilitated inquiry-based process to examine data related to mentoring and induction and really drill down into what that data is saying about the performance of mentoring and induction programs at the district or school level. The second tool that's aligned in this module is a root cause analysis workbook. And the purpose of this tool is to guide teams through a process to explore root causes of the challenges that mentoring and induction programs are attempting to address. For example, one common challenge that mentoring and induction programs are implemented to address in districts is teacher attrition. So mentoring and induction programs are implemented with the hopes that this will help teachers feel more supported and stay in their schools. And this workbook might be a tool that could help teams conduct a root cause analysis into why teachers are leaving in order to identify some context-specific strategies for strengthening induction programs. So this tool helps teams explore those root causes and identify context-specific strategies for how they can strengthen their induction programs. Next, we have an induction program inventory. And this is a tool that helps teams really plan for the building blocks of a comprehensive induction program with a really specific focus on the support structures that various groups of stakeholders need. For example, the support structures that new teachers need, the support structures that mentors need, the support structures principals need, and finally, what district leaders need. So this is something in the nature of an inventory where you can take a look at the components that are in your induction program and see if the appropriate support structures are in place for these groups of stakeholders. We also have two very special tools, and these tools were co-developed between the GTL Center and the Center for School Turnaround, again, as part of the Talent for Turnaround Leadership Academy initiative. And these tools are very special because they were designed specifically to address the needs of new teachers who are working in turnaround schools. So these tools are based on the 4 domains of rapid school improvement from the Center for School Turnaround and integrated with the high quality mentoring and induction practices from the New Teacher Center that Lisa just reviewed for us. So of these two very special tools, the first one is a mentoring and induction in turnaround schools self-assessment. And this is a self-assessment that's going to help teams reflect on and monitor their progress for both district and school level implementation of mentoring and induction in turnaround settings. And this tool is really a great starting place for any schools or districts who are operating in a turnaround context who want to reflect and assess how they are performing in relation to mentoring and induction programs in these settings. The second tool is a mentoring and induction in turnaround schools crosswalk and reflection. And this tool outlines an integrated model for mentoring and induction in turnaround settings and really helps teams reflect on its implementation at the school, district, and state levels. So again, our goal is to foster collaborative relationships between states and districts, and this tool can help do that within the context of mentoring and induction in turnaround schools. The second module that's developed is on mentor recruitment, selection, and assignment. In addition to the anchor presentation that outlines research and best practices for recruitment, selection, and assignment, we have a series of handouts. A new vision for mentor recruitment, selection, and assignment is an activity that can help teams reflect on the practices that they are using for recruitment, selection, and assignment and determine whether they are moving toward a comprehensive set of practices that really gets to their desired outcomes, or whether they're using older, less effective practices. The final two handouts are lists of roles and responsibilities of an effective mentor and qualities of an effective mentor. These are lists that teams can use and modify for their own purposes as they are determining what they would like to have included in a roles and responsibilities description for a mentor. There are two team tools associated with this module. The first one is a mentor recruitment, selection, and assignment design workbook. This is a series of reflection exercises that a state and district would work through together, and it helps teams really think about how to incorporate those research-based best practices around recruitment, selection, and assignment into the design of their programs. So this might include things like innovative strategies for recruitment that have not been tried, how schools and districts can create a rigorous set of mentor selection criteria and an equally rigorous selection process, and how schools and districts can implement best practices in mentor matching and assignment. The mentor selection criteria tally is an activity that goes deeply into the idea of developing rigorous research-based mentor selection criteria. So this activity leads teams through a consensus building process to develop and prioritize those criteria in order to come away with a finalized and vetted set of selection criteria for their school or district. Module 3 is on mentor professional learning, development, and assessment. There is, again, the anchor presentation that highlights the research and the best practices related to professional development and assessment of mentors. There's a handout called A New Vision for Mentor Professional Learning, Development, and Assessment that, again, is a reflection activity designed to help schools and districts assess whether they are moving toward comprehensive research-based practices or whether they're using older, less effective practices. And then, based on that reflection activity, there is a team tool that is very similar to the one I just described that is a Mentor Professional Learning, Development, and Assessment Design Workbook. Again, it helps teams reflect on the design of their mentoring and induction programs, specifically around mentor development standards and best practices, the content and format of mentor professional learning, so what kinds of things should you be training mentors on, and methods of feedback and ongoing formative assessment for mentors, because we know feedback is a critical part of a beginning teacher improving his or her practice, and the same goes for mentors. They need ongoing feedback and formative assessment to improve their practices. So what I'm going to do now is give a couple examples of how these tools might be used in a real-life scenario. So what I'm going to do is give a scenario that might be familiar to the participants on this webinar, either as a staff member of a state education agency or someone who is working in a school district or even someone working at the school level. I'll give a scenario and then talk about possible tools that collaborative state and district teams could use together to problem solve around these specific examples. When I'm finished reading the example, what I'm going to do is actually pull some of these tools up on my screen so you can see what they look like and get a brief preview. So here's an example for the group. For many years, Lakeside School District has struggled with teacher turnover, particularly first and second year teachers. As a strategy to boost teacher retention, the district created a mentoring and induction program. Although the program has been in place for 5 years, the district continues to lose early career teachers at roughly the same rate as it did before. This may be a scenario that is familiar to some of you who are working in districts, or a scenario that's familiar to a state agency staff member who supports districts around mentoring and induction. And what we have done in this toolkit is tried to put together some possible tools that could address a situation like this. So there are 3 possible tools that could help here: the data dive tool that I described, the root cause analysis workbook, and the induction program inventory. So what I'm going to do now is share my screen for each of these examples and show you what they actually look like and how those might be used in this situation. The first is our data dive tool. And each of these tools begins with a statement of the tool's purpose and instructions for facilitation. And then when we're past that in the data dive tool, the purpose of the data dive tool is to take a look at multiple sources of data, both impact data and perception data. So things such as teacher retention data, student achievement data, educator effectiveness data, and also examples of perception data like feedback from mentoring program completers, feedback from principals, exit interviews with former teachers, things of that nature. This tool helps facilitate a conversation around looking at both impact data and perception data in order to dive more deeply into what kinds of things are happening in the district. So we know in this example, Lakeside School District has an issue with teacher turnover. This activity might be used to help examine what that means at a more deep level. For instance, is the problem with teacher turnover just for first and second year teachers? Is it first and second year teachers at a particular set of schools within the Lakeside School District? Is it a set of teachers within a particular subject or subject areas? This data dive tool could help teams take a look at teacher turnover data and come up with some more concrete, more deep levels of analysis around what the problem might be related to teacher turnover. So it takes you through a facilitated process of making predictions about the data, going visual, making observations about the data, and then finally some inferences. So I've shown this just to give you a little preview and a little taste of what these tools might have to offer. And so now I'm going to switch and give you a little taste of another tool that might be used for this particular example. And that's the root cause analysis workbook. The root cause analysis workbook, it really takes teams, collaborative state and district teams, through a facilitated process to really take a look at the challenges that are being addressed through mentoring and induction programs. And in this specific example, the challenge they're trying to address is high levels of teacher turnover. And it takes teams through a facilitated process to identify the root causes of why that turnover might be happening. The facilitation guidance in this tool, it gives examples and tips for how this might happen. And here we see an example of a completed root cause analysis process that teams can use as a model. Once teams have taken a look at those root causes and brainstormed some of those, this tool can help teams develop a coherent statement of induction program purpose, which is very, very important for making sure that your mentoring and induction programs are responsive to the root causes of your identified challenges. There's more work around categorizing the root causes. There's a facilitated activity to gain even further understanding where you were visualizing the root causes. And then finally, determining strategies to address those root causes that are related to those 9 high-quality mentoring and induction practices from the New Teacher Center. Again, I'm previewing this very quickly just to give you a little taste and a little preview of how these might be used. And I want to do that for one more tool for this example, which is our induction program inventory. So as I mentioned, the induction program inventory is a way to determine the extent to which the essential components of induction programs are in place, with a very specific focus on professional learning and support structures for beginning teachers, mentors, principals, and district leaders. And this, like many of our tools, is aligned with the New Teacher Center's high-quality mentoring and induction practices. This guides teams through a process to take a look at the key components of professional learning and support structures for these groups of stakeholders. So here we see what that looks like for beginning teacher professional learning and support structures. We see the list of the key components that should be there. For instance, things like beginning teachers participating in orientation, beginning teachers being observed by their mentor on a weekly basis, and so on. There's a place to assess the extent to which this is in place in your school or district's mentoring and induction program and take notes about the status of implementation. And then some prompts to reflect on the extent to which these are in place and create action steps to address these components if they are not in place in the mentoring or induction program. That structure is repeated again to discuss professional learning structures and supports for mentors, for principals, and finally for district leaders. So hopefully that's giving you just a little taste of some of the things that are available within this toolkit that could help address a situation like the example we just gave for Lakeside School District. I'm going to share one more example and show you a couple more tools. So in example number 2, the Cherrywood School District consists of urban, suburban, and rural schools. For many years, the selection of mentor teachers was left to school principals, who often recruit by asking for volunteers. As a result, teachers in the rural schools are frequently paired with mentors who do not teach in their subject area, and the teachers in the urban schools are paired with mentors who do not have specific training to address the needs of the large populations of English learners and students with disabilities. Feedback from beginning teachers has indicated that although their relationships with their mentors are generally positive, they are not receiving feedback to help improve their instruction. I think this is a scenario that might be resonant with some states or districts, particularly those districts that are a bit larger and encompass a variety of schools and a variety of settings. In a scenario like this, the GTL toolkit provides a few tools that might be of use. I'm sorry, I'm getting a...
Yeah, we
apologize.
Can't see the PowerPoint. That's okay. Just wanted to let you know.
Well, thank you for letting me know.
Yeah.
Can you see now?
Yes, looks good.
I apologize. So again, Cherrywood School District, urban, suburban, and rural schools and beginning teachers, because of their selection process, are not getting their needs met and are not receiving feedback to help improve their instruction. In a scenario like this, when we're talking about a collaborative relationship between states and districts who are coming together to solve this particular problem, we might suggest two particular tools in the toolkit that could help with this. The first is the Mentor Recruitment, Selection, and Assignment Design Workbook, and the second is the Mentor Selection Criteria Tally. So I'm going to screen share again, and please let me know if that is not happening successfully. I'm going to go to the workbook first. There we go. So this workbook helps collaborative state and district teams work through some guided reflection questions. And that it helps them to reflect on their current mentor processes, and it includes some really in-depth and detailed probing questions around the current processes that are in place. You know, for instance, what is your teacher doing to what is your district doing to identify and persuade teachers with leadership potential to become mentors? Is the mentor role part of an established pathway to teacher leadership in your school or district? Things that really probe deeply around what are the drivers for your current mentor recruitment processes. Based on that reflection, which should be happening collaboratively between states and districts, the tool provides facilitation to lead teams through some prompts to help them develop or refine mentor recruitment processes. And then finally, do some action planning to ensure or increase the integrity of the recruitment process. So this really gets at a level of action planning around, now that we've reflected on our current processes and identified some areas for improvements, how will we carry out and who will carry out the various action steps that will get us to this vision of success for mentor recruitment, selection, and assignment. The workbook goes through some more facilitation that follows that same process of reflection, some brainstorming of changes that are needed to current processes, and then action planning, and it completes that process for current mentor selection processes and then current mentor assignment processes. So again, this is really a facilitated tool that helps, it identifies the key decision points that need to be made within mentoring and induction programs related to recruitment and selection, and then helps teams come to good research-based decisions around mentor recruitment, selection, and assignment. The other tool I mentioned, and I think this one is we've done this with great success in other districts, is our mentor selection criteria tally. Give me a moment to get that up. Here it is. This activity is really a consensus building activity that helps teams develop selection criteria. So what it does is it gives a very comprehensive list of a lot of different things that various school and districts might prioritize for mentor selection criteria. They're organized into several categories of criteria. And the idea is that team members individually would go through and rate how important they believe each individual criterion is. And then the team comes together, and there is a process to tally, as the name suggests, tally up all of the priority ratings that individual team members have given the various selection criteria, and come to a total district tally for how the members of the team value and prioritize the various selection criteria. And the whole purpose of this activity is to get teams thinking about which criteria are most important for the context of their school or district for mentor selection. And then really it helps stimulate a conversation about which criteria to prioritize, which criteria might need to be added to current selection criteria, which might need to be eliminated. So this is a really great activity for sparking some discussion around teams around how do we create strong, rigorous sets of mentor selection criteria. All right, I'm switching back to the PowerPoint. Lisa, can you see the PowerPoint?
Not yet, but maybe just need to give it a second. Oh, there it goes. Yep.
Okay, wonderful. So there I just gave you two scenarios, two examples, and showed some tools that we have in the toolkit that might be able to address those scenarios. And maybe some of those scenarios are ringing true to you as a state level staff member or a district level staff member, but I'm guessing that pretty much everyone who is on this call right now has some ideas of their needs in their state or district around mentoring and induction, and hopefully this preview of tools gave you some ideas of things that are available that might be applicable to your context. So what we have available to you to help is a mentoring and induction toolkit quick guide. This is a 2-page PDF. We are going to send a follow-up email after the conclusion of this webinar to all the participants, and it will include this 2-page toolkit quick guide as an attachment. This toolkit quick guide provides an overview of what I just went over of the team tools and their descriptions and purposes. So how might you use this particular team tool? So in addition to receiving this toolkit quick guide as an attachment in a follow-up email, this is also available on our website, and I will show you how to access the website momentarily. So know that you have if you can't keep all these tools straight in your head, or if you would like a refresher, you have a resource that lists the tools and their descriptions. And now I'm going to talk about accessing the toolkit. So several of the resources that I just previewed for you today on the screen are available publicly on the GTL Center website. So the GTL Center's charge as a content center, which I have mentioned, is to work directly with state education agencies and regional comprehensive centers that are supporting state education agencies. So again, the most important thing to remember is that the GTL Center designed this toolkit to give states tools, resources, and support to facilitate conversations with districts about the design of effective mentoring and induction programs. So with this charge in mind of fostering collaborative relationships between the state and districts, we are piloting an approach to accessing the toolkit, and its goal is to help strengthen those relationships between states and districts. So at this time, we have made select tools available for preview on the GTL Center website. They are listed here. Those include the anchor presentations. So again, anchor presentations are the slide decks that summarize research and best practices. And the anchor presentations are publicly posted on our website for modules 1, 2, and 3. We have also made 2 team tools available. One we did not preview today on the screen. It is the Mentoring and Induction in Turnaround Schools Self-Assessment, which is a really, really excellent tool and a good starting point for districts and states. And we also have included a link to the New Teacher Center's 2018 Induction Program Standards, which were just released earlier this week, and we strongly encourage everyone to click on that link and take a look at those. So there is at this time limited access to the full toolkit, and that is based on the goal of fostering, again, those collaborative relationships between states and districts. And because we at the GTL Center are working directly with RCCs and SEAs, any RCC or SEA staff member can go to the GTL Center webpage and request access to the rest of the toolkit materials that aren't publicly posted for preview. The process to request access takes you to a short form that looks like this, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen again and show you what it looks like. Lisa, can you see the screen?
Yep.
Okay, so this is if you are a regional comprehensive center and a state education agency staff member, you can click on a link on our website, and it will take you to this short form to request access to our toolkits. And once you, as the RCC or SEA staff member, has filled out this very short form, a member of the GTL Center staff will reach out to you. And what we're going to do is help your team to identify and customize the right resources from the toolkit that help you achieve your state's mentoring and induction priorities. The base part of the website, and both of these links will be sent in the follow-up email that you'll receive at the conclusion of this webinar, but I want to show you what it looks like. This is the landing page for our mentoring and induction toolkit. Here is our link to request technical assistance support. It takes you to this form I just showed you. And if you scroll down a little further, here are links to all of those publicly available resources that I just mentioned and went over. There's also, farther down on the page, just some more text highlighting the structure of modules 1 through 7. And you can check back here periodically and see what else has been posted. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. And again, I think it's slow. I think it is slow to load again. So Lisa, please tell me when you can see the presentation.
I can see it now, Lindsay.
Excellent. So as of right now, we are encouraging SEA or RCC staff members to go to our website to fill out that form, and then we'll get in touch to talk about the needs for your team and help you identify and customize the right resources. So as of right now, any person who requests access to the toolkit who is not an RCC or SEA staff member, so these might be people like district or school-based personnel, university faculty, or teacher association representatives. Anyone who is not an RCC or SEA staff member will be guided by our team to contact their SEA. And our hope is that by having folks who are based in districts and schools and other organizations go through their state education office, we're helping to establish and strengthen those state and district partnerships around mentoring and induction, which is really the goal of the toolkit. So this approach is our current process for accessing the toolkit materials. And based on feedback from states and districts, that process may change. However, we want to make sure that right now we are really focused on promoting collaboration and support to states and building stronger relationships with their district, university, and association colleagues. So having said that, there will always be select tools, specifically the anchor presentations, that will be publicly available on our website, but we ask that if you are not an RCC or SEA staff member, you are going through your RCC or SEA to access the materials, and GTL will help guide you in the right direction to do so. I want to plug for everyone, please stay tuned, because coming in early 2018 are our remaining 4 modules listed here. When these modules are developed and released, we will make sure that we send an email blast to everyone who is registered for this webinar, so you'll get a little notification through email blast when these modules are ready. And now we're ready for our second audience poll. And my colleague Whitney is going to help me pull that up for us. Okay, I believe the poll is open now, and there is absolutely no commitment involved in this question, but we here at the GTL Center want to get a general sense. Are you interested in setting up a meeting with GTL Center staff to talk more about the toolkit? Yes or no? We'll give everyone a few minutes to complete that. So it looks like roughly 55% of participants are saying yes, they are interested in further meeting around the toolkit, and about 45% are saying no. For those who are not interested in a further conversation with GTL staff, I highly encourage you to take a look at our website where those publicly resources available. And again, we'll make sure that you receive that link in a follow-up email that will come at the conclusion of this webinar. So with that, It's time for audience questions, and our colleague Caitlin is going to help us moderate these questions, and Lisa and I will attempt to answer them as best we can.
And I'm just realizing, Lindsay, I don't know if Caitlin has the ability to speak to the audience, so I'm going to jump in, and I've been going through the questions here. And one of them that seems really valuable for us to answer is one that Laura Shields shared, and it says, when budget constraints do not allow for paid mentoring, what are the top induction actions to take? And this is a really important question, and I'm sure a lot of folks probably have it top of mind because funding is an issue. So just, having had just a couple of seconds to think about this, one of the things that seems really important and relatively low cost is working to create rigorous mentor selection criteria. And this is something that we feel is critically important because recruitment and selection of mentors is really the foundation of having a solid mentoring piece of induction. In fact, I'm gonna try to copy and paste this quote from Ellen Moyer into the chat box for everybody to see. Let me try to get that out there. Yeah, so she says, recruitment and selection of mentors are possibly the most important variables in the success or failure of a mentor program. Yet there are myriad obstacles in urban systems to finding the right people to be mentors. There are also myriad creative and strategic opportunities to surmount these obstacles and find mentors who truly have the vision, talent, and competence needed to transform teaching and learning in schools. And sorry, for those of you who don't know, Ellen Moyer has led the New Teacher Center for I don't know how many years, many, many years, and has committed her professional life to this work, and certainly knows better than probably any of us that that this is an important piece. And what's nice about this piece is it's not really that costly. The tools that we have in this toolkit, as Lindsay mentioned, we have a mentor selection criteria tally that really helps districts and states think through the criteria that really matter in their context. And so once you have that, you can use that when you are reaching out to potential mentor candidates and letting them know what's important when it comes to selecting mentors. You can use that in the interview process, and then you can use that as kind of a template for the expectations that you have of mentors as well once they're working with teachers. One of the things that really transforms mentoring from this buddy type mentoring to a more comprehensive mentoring approach is to really focus the mentor and teacher interaction on instructional practices. And so also having those conversations focus on the professional teaching standards in your state is really an essential piece that doesn't necessarily require a lot of added investment, especially if your mentors are well aware of how those professional teaching standards can be enacted. If that's not the case, then I think one of the most important aspects is to get mentors to that place where they have the professional development that gets them to a place where they're confident in having those conversations with new teachers around the professional teaching standards and focusing new teachers on instructional growth. Another piece that, just to add to that, is that administrators play a key role in this as well, and it doesn't cost any more money for administrators to really establish a positive culture for teacher development in their buildings and prioritize induction and just articulate the vision for the importance of new teacher induction in their buildings. So those are the places that I would suggest turning to. But hopefully, I'll give a plug also for states to be thinking about funding this work through Title II funds and also through any school improvement funds that are available to really address the needs, not just for teacher professional development, but also for increasing student performance. It looks like we also have a question from Michelle Lee around, she says, I don't know who the new teacher induction point person is for my state. Is this something you can facilitate so people who aren't associated with an SDA or an RCC can reach out to these organizations? Certainly, Michelle, or anyone else who is not part of an SDA or an RCC, we would appreciate you reaching out to us through the channels that Lindsay provided, and in the follow-up email, you'll have a link to that request. If you reach out to us and just let us know your needs, we can do our best to connect you with the right people. It may be that we connect with our partners in the regional comprehensive centers to access the right people. But in any case, we'll do our best to make sure that you have the opportunity to partner with the appropriate people. There's another good question here from Hal Portner. Do you see any connection between mentoring and instructional coaching, perhaps as a second or third year extension? That's a great question, Hal. And I would say absolutely, there's a ton of overlap between mentoring and instructional coaching. In fact, in some of the districts that we're working closely with, they have an overlapping professional development for mentors and instructional coaches. And I think the New Teacher Center also has some documents that illustrate kind of the overlap and the difference between what mentoring and instructional coaching can be. So a very good question. And I think, you know, the answer is, like many in education, it kind of depends on the district that you're in. Some will have very differentiated roles, and in others, there will be quite a bit of overlap. So definitely something for everyone to think about what makes the most sense in their context.
And Lisa, I will further highlight that in Module 2, which is around mentor recruitment, selection, and assignment, there's a portion of the anchor presentation that is around helping teams facilitate development of a job description for mentors. And part of the information in that anchor presentation and then the facilitated activities that go along with it is this idea of some districts may need to help distinguish between the roles of a mentor and an instructional coach. And there's some guidance in that Module 2 and the associated tools that can help teams with that.
Excellent. Thank you, Lindsay. We have another question from Megan Steiner. Approximately when do you anticipate releasing resources on quantitative approaches to measuring induction outcomes? Megan, we anticipate having a module, and maybe Lindsay, you can take us to that screen. We have upcoming modules that were slated to release early in 2018. And one of those, Module 6, as you can see on the screen, is collecting evidence of induction program success. And in that, we will highlight quantitative and qualitative approaches to collecting data from teachers and principals and mentors that are involved in the induction program, and as well as potentially looking at student outcomes. So We anticipate releasing that sometime early this year, and hope that that answers your question, Megan. Okay, and in the chat box, we see a number of questions is kind of pointing to specific tools that folks are interested in, which is wonderful. One of the things that we're doing is we're copying all of the questions out of the chat box, and we will respond to any individually that we haven't been able to respond to at this point. And I've also been responding to a number of people individually just through the GoToWebinar control panel. So I think we're doing fairly well on getting to the majority of the questions that have been asked. Let's see. Oh, here's another one from Ella. Hi, Ella. She asks, can conducting some induction activities online be useful to be more cost effective? Certainly, that is something that we see rural communities making use of. And I don't think I can speak to this in detail, but I think it's useful to know that the New Teacher Center developed an online platform for mentoring that was really successful, and I think still continues to happen in rural communities in Alaska and in Montana. And they found quite a bit of success. And I think my guess is you can probably find more information on that through the NTC website. The name of the program was, I think, E-Mentoring for Success. So if you were to type that into their search engine, I think you'd probably find some good information there. Got some shout outs for Ellen Moyer. That's nice to see. Oh, and comments. Okay, so Lynn Kepp from the New Teacher Center says Ellen Moyer was at the New Teacher Center for 28 years in the project itself. So excellent. Thanks for that update. Let's see. Yeah, it's great to see you guys are also, just connecting us to the resources that you need. So, so we will follow up with you individually if you made comments like that. Otherwise, I think, Lindsay, or Caitlin, you can chat to me and let me know if there are other questions we should answer. But Lindsay, do you see anything else that seems like a good one to pull up in this time?
I don't think so, Lisa.
Okay. Well, excellent. We're doing great on time, which is always a nice thing for these webinars. So I guess just to wrap up, we want to assure you that we will be in touch, and right after this email, we will send you all a follow-up email. Right after this webinar, we'll follow up with an email that will include a link to the toolkit materials that are posted on the GTL website. We'll also include a link to all the ways to request access to the rest of the toolkit. And as I said, while we are limiting this to SEA and RCCs at this point, we'd still love to hear from any of you who are interested, just so we can connect the dots as much as we can and build the partnerships around this work to make it more sustainable. You'll also receive in that email the Toolkit Quick Reference Guide that Lindsay shared with us just a moment ago. It's just a 2-page document, And I think that document is actually really useful in having conversations with your colleagues about what the toolkit is. And if you're excited about this work, I think you can use that guide to drive those conversations and highlight to SEA staff or your regional comprehensive colleagues what sort of resources could be valuable to you in your setting, whether you work in a district or at a university or at a REL or as a part of a teachers association. I think it's a really great resource that you can use to start that conversation. And then finally, we have a webinar survey, which is on the next slide, and we'll be sending the link to this in the email as well. But we would love to hear your feedback and just know how you would like us to improve these sorts of webinars. So please complete that survey for us in the next week, and we'd love to hear your feedback. So with that, I think we'll end a little bit early. You can see our references here. They'll be part of the webinar, the PowerPoint that we share with all of you. And with that, we just really like to thank you for taking the time to join us today. We hope this webinar was useful and really look forward to partnering with your states to improve mentoring and induction programs. So with that, take good care and let's be in touch.